So should you buy real estate or should you be investing as we go into 2022? Now, before we get started, if you're new to our channel is all about money, building wealth, and giving yourself permission to be wealthy. So each week, Stephanie and I will post 3 videos on this channel. One that we do together as a couple, one that Stephanie selects that she wants to speak about, and one that I get to select myself. And today's video is all about real estate versus investing. So let's jump in. Oh, and by the way, before we jump in, just make sure if you enjoy this video at the end, you don't have to do it now, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos just like this one. Well, the question I think is different for everybody. I think a lot of people will have a variety of answers for this particular question. We personally want to make sure that we're doing our best to allow people to make their own decisions so that you can go do your own research and you have our perspective, but by no means are we financial experts. So for us, we used to follow the Dave Ramsey way of doing things. And I still think that's a good way for the majority of people, because the majority of people are not going to be super millionaires, and some people will be that watch this channel. But the majority of people, in my personal belief, should pay off their house, their dwelling, if that's what they want to do. So let me explain a little bit. One thing that happens often, we have cycles in the investing market and just in the market in general. Whenever we have inflation that happens, whenever we have rates that go up and go down, if your home is paid off, then you put yourself in a really good financial position to not have the worry of a mortgage. The mortgage that most of us carry is the largest bill that we will ever have in our life. So if you're somebody that says, hey, I worry about my mortgage, or hey, I'm worried about the next cycle if I were to lose my job, or hey, my job is not the most concrete thing that I've ever had, I would like to have a more concrete job, but if I have the cash allocation, I want to go ahead and fast pace myself or fast track myself to pay off my house. So again, paying off your house just give you less worry about this massive bill that you have. And so a lot of people will feel more comfortable doing that. Now, with that being said, mathematically, that may not make the most sense for those of you who are let's say not as risk averse or like to take a little more risk with your finances. And I'm not telling anybody to take any risk. I'm not telling anybody to be safe. This again is all your choice. This is just my personal thoughts here. So as we look at most real estate markets, what we know is if you're living in your own dwelling, it's not technically an investment, right? Because if you had an investment property, your investment property is going to have a higher rate of return in most cases. And so what I mean by this is most real estate markets, you're going to see anywhere from a 3 to maybe a 5% rate of return each year, meaning if your house is worth $500,000, it's going to appreciate about 5% or roughly $25,000. Now, that's not something that you can take out of the house immediately unless you got some type of loan, which is for a whole nother video. However, that property can increase up to 5%. So anywhere from 3 to 5%. So at 3%, you're going to look at about $15,000, and at 5%, you're going to look at about $25,000. Again, that's a $500,000 property. But let's take a different approach here. Let's look at somebody who might be willing to invest their money. And so if you're looking to invest your money, we typically look at index funds or ETFs as our main driver for our investment accounts. And by the way, if you haven't watched our previous video on selling our $550,000 house or planning to do so, make sure you stay to the end to learn more on what our decision has been going through 2020 to 2021 and now 2022. So if you're somebody who has a little more risk tolerance, you may be looking at wanting to invest your money into the stock market. So as I stated earlier, we like ETFs and index funds, specifically the S&P 500. The reason we like the S&P 500 is because it's diversified. For those of you who don't know what diversification is, think about it this way. Let's say you go to a car lot. What if there was only one car there? Well, that's not diversification. You only have one car to choose from. But let's say you go to a massive car lot and there's thousands of cars to choose from. Well, that's kind of like the S&P 500. You have thousands of cars, but you make one single purchase and you can have all those cars or small pieces of all those cars into one vehicle, if you will. The S&P 500 historically has returned about 10% average rate of return every year. So you have a 10% growth every year. Now, if you adjust that with inflation, it's between 8 and 10%. So mathematically, yes, I think investing more of your money rather than paying off your house faster is a mathematical smart decision. But then again, every decision is not a mathematical decision. Some decisions are made from the heart, and your well-being as far as having a dwelling over your head may be more important than making more money in the stock market in the long run. So that's what makes this decision so hard. Are you a math person, or are you somebody who's tied to making sure that your house is paid off? So that's really where you have to make this decision for yourself and your family, is going, hey, if I were to lose my job, if another downturn in the market came like in 2020, at the beginning anyway, and I lost my job, would I want to make sure we had a house overhead, or do I want to make sure that my investment accounts have a lot of money in them and that we could possibly live off of that in the next 10 years? So that's a tough question to answer for everybody. I want to tell you what we did. So we're on the Dave Ramsey plan, and we got all of our debt paid off. We paid off, I think it was like $40,000 in student loans in 2020. And then from there, we said, hey, you know what? Next step in this whole plan, I think it's like step number 7, is pay off your house or start planning for your kids' education, right, in their future. And so we fast-tracked that. We said, hey, we're making this amount of money. Let's go ahead and see if we can pay off our house. We have this much saved, and we just threw a lump sum and paid off our house. Fast forward a year later, as we did more research and read more books, because as you read more and you know more and your knowledge grows and your risk tolerance basically goes up, so you're able to take on more risk. We sat there and we said, why did we pay off our house if we're not going to be in the state or even in the country, because we currently live in Singapore and we'll be moving to another country after this? Not only that, on top of that, for us specifically, the house has a tax on the property of about $12,000 every year. Although we are currently making about $3,300 per month, about $12,000 of that goes into paying our taxes, our property taxes specifically. So then we go, okay, so we have a renter, that renter pays us that much, we make roughly about $20,000 to $24,000 every year off of that property. But what would happen if we put that money into the stock market? And so this is where we start thinking about things from the mathematical side. We don't live in the house, so as far as having the house over our heads, we're not so worried about that because, again, it's a rental property, not by choice, but because we moved for a job. And so if we put that money into the stock market, we're looking at a rate of return between 8 and 10%. Now, in the last couple of years, it's been more like 26%. But we're super conservative, so let's keep it on the conservative side. Let's say 10% at the max right now. So right now, again, we take home about $3,300 per month of rental income. So with that $3,300 times 12 is about $39,600. That's a good amount of money. But then you have to take into account, we got to take $12,000 out of that to pay property taxes. So now we're really sitting more at roughly around $27,000. Again, I'm not complaining about that. I don't think either of us are complaining about that. But then we put that same amount of money, what the property is actually worth, into the stock market, and let's look at that math. So the house is roughly about $550,000. We think we'll take about $500,000 out of that house whenever we sell it, and then we'll put that all into the stock market, specifically the S&P 500. So we take $500,000 and multiply it by 10%, and now we're looking at about $50,000. So just by doing that alone, if the stock market performs like it has in the past, at roughly about 10%, give or take every couple of years is going to change, right? We're looking at making about an additional $23,000 by putting our money in the S&P 500. So if we have that money in the S&P 500, we're making $50,000, and that's an additional $23,000 on top of what the house was making us. Not only that, we're also taking out the fact that we have renters, we have different upkeep that we have to do for the house, we have insurance for the house, so we have all these other factors that are considered debts, if you will, that we have to worry about and consider as we own the property. So specifically, again, for us, the best decision was to make sure that we had a higher rate of return, because that's what we're going to be living off of in the future. And we think in most markets that if we lived off the money that we're going to have in our investment accounts, we can almost live anywhere in the world and not worry about that, except for like New York or LA or places like that. So at the end of the day, the decision is totally up to you and your family and what's best for you and your family. Is it a mathematical decision, or is it a decision of the heart and making sure you have this dwelling over your head? Now, if you want to see more on why Stephanie and I decided to sell our house, make sure you check out our video here that's about selling our $550,000 house. And don't forget to give yourself permission to be wealthy.